So my name is Ted
Then why
Corbeil,
don't you introduce yourself?
and I'm a recently retired Marine Corps intelligence officer that's starting my second career in sales and sales enablement. So I've been spending the last 2 years trying to figure out the way to leverage my military experience and best practices and drive revenue growth, through data-driven insights, collaboration, and business innovation. So it's been a great journey so far.
So tell us about the transition from military, Marine, to working for HP. How did you learn how to re-enculturate yourself to civil life after 23 years?
Well, it is definitely a journey, but it comes down to defining my mission. Right, my mission was to start a new career, and to do that was to learn a new language. Figure out how my military skills translate in the civilian world, and understand the new environment that I'm now operating in. In retrospect, and looking back at the last 3 years and knowing what I know now, it's the equivalent of a mid-career change to a different industry that a lot of people go through. So a lot of people can kind of relate to some of the fears and the anxieties and the challenges of trying to do something new without any direct experience. So just like someone just trying to switch roles or industries is trying to relate what they did there and how it applies here, that's what I'm trying to do now through what my military experience did to how I'm doing it now to drive sales and sales revenue.
So let's start with the onboarding analogy, recruiting a Marine versus onboarding salespeople.
Like, to me, I can always do a lot of parallel sales. So the Marine Corps is kind of unique. So if you see our billboards, we don't accept applications. We only accept commitments, right? So right there, marketing department, and they're targeting a certain customer base, right? They're looking for type A alpha personalities with a commitment to service above self, that are dedicated and physically fit. So there's certain customer profile that they're going after. And I see that you need some of those same traits if you're going to be sales. So I did a year of sales, my first year out of the Marine Corps, before I was recruited by Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And I sold systems integration projects for an industrial automation firm that specialized in manufacturing space. And I learned that to be an effective salesman, you need to have discipline, right? You need to have self-discipline, because no one really you get a number and you got to go hit your number, and they'll just ask you at the end of the quarter, the NDFY, if you hit your number. You got to be able to multitask. You got to be able to plan out an engagement strategy. You got to be proactive. So there's lots of those same skill sets that makes Marines successful that all translates well into your success in being a salesperson.
So tell us about your current position.
So currently I am doing sales enablement for our U.S. Public sector cybersecurity practice. So I'm working with sales leaders and our sales teams and our offering leads to develop sales strategies for our managed security service portfolio. And I'm also, driving and I'm writing the technical description of services for our RFP responses.
So how do you get US salespeople onboarded at this point?
So we have a pretty rigorous sales on-ramp training program, and we also have a very developed advanced sales training program called the Spartans training. So it's kind of mirrored after a martial arts system. So we have a belt system where you start off, you earn your white belt, and then that's kind of where I have earned my white belt. And then you have certain sales commitments you have to achieve to level up to your yellow belt and your green belt, and ultimately your black belt. So once you meet some sales commitments, you keep leveling up to be more and more effective. So it's a continual training program that's well suited for our salespeople.
What are your weapons in that mission? What technology do you deploy to make it easier for you?
It starts with in requirements driven. Right? I sit down with my sales team and I said, what is the types of information you need to be successful on this particular pursuit? So there's a whole different level of information requirements to go after a new client as there is for an existing client, but there's some commonalities. So once I get those information requirements, then I go out and I tap into the wide array of resources we have available to you. So we have a very robust competitive intelligence section. We have a marketing intelligence section. We have a business intelligence section, and then we have lots of external resources that we use. So what I do is evaluate and pull information from all those various tools and all those sources, and then I synthesize it and compile it into a very focused and individualized engagement strategy for the sales guy. So it's kind of like making sausage.
What is the biggest challenge that you're facing right now, besides the chaos from the merger?
So that's a challenge, right, in and of itself. I'm sure many of you have experienced that, but there's a couple of three main factors of how that influences me. First is the personal, the human dimension. Everyone kind of goes internal. So that's a term we had that we referred to when we were in my infantry days. When you're sitting out in a fighting hole and it's cold and in the rain and you pull that poncho over your head and you go internal, you're worrying about yourself and you're not worrying about the mission or the person to your left or right. So that's the kind of a natural reaction when people hear the news of a spin merger is, I'm going internal, am I going to be all right? Then you got that whole, what I refer to as the game of musical chairs, right? They just started the music, or the music's going to start on 1 April in the new company. Are you going to have a chair? Let's run around and see if I have a chair. I not care what chair it is. Do I have a chair? Am I going to be all right? And even if that means, maybe someone pulling a chair out from under you so they have a chair, it can get like that if you lose focus on teamwork and mission and the higher good. And the last one is just a natural, obvious disruption to business operations. How do you sell managed security services or managed IT services 3 to 5 year contracts? When you're asking the person to write a blank check, let's just leave to be paid to blank, and we'll fill in the name of our company in April. Once it's announced, kind of thing. So there's lots of that makes it hard to support salespeople when they're distracted and not focused on selling.
How do you balance your career with your personal life?
So I call it buckets. I have 3 main buckets where I can put my time. I can do it for personal development, I can do it for professional development, or I could do it for relationships, right? So when I'm trying to decide where to put my time, I'm putting that hour of each day in one of those buckets. So now I got to make sure that I'm filling all those buckets equally. And one of the ways you can do that is you can look for 2 furs or 3 furs, right? If you can have a hobby, personal development, that you want to golf or something, and you convince your spouse or your best friend to golf with you, now you got 2 furs, right? You're doing relationships and you're in personal in yourself. And then professionally, if you can take the guys out to work or do a golf outing with the team, now you got the trifecta, right? The triple threat. So it's all about, balancing that out. So the reason why I kind of made the decision to retire is after 23 years of being gone and working hard, I kind of looked over in the family bucket and it was full of IOUs. So I decided at that time I was going to stop serving and then settle down and establish some roots and start a more traditional career where I would be around more, because my kids are old enough now at 10, 13, and 16, to miss me when I'm gone.
So what about the Sales Enablement Society bucket? Tell me about that.
Oh, this has been a blessing in disguise. I mean, this has been the best thing that's happened to me this year, and quite honestly, in my military to civilian transition, because we're always struggling as a veteran. You're trying to figure out, where do I add value? So I'm doing all of these things like I've described in terms of developing sales strategies and developing, engagement strategies and training for the sales reps and all that kind of stuff. But I never knew what it was called until I met Bob Britton. So I met Bob Britton through Howard Dover through one of our summer interns. So when I started last summer, one of our interns was a student of Howard Dover's UT Dallas sales program. I met him when I got invited to their one of their student events, and he said, "Oh, you're a Marine? You need to meet my friend Bob. He was in the Navy." So we had lunch, and I was describing him the kinds of things I was doing at HP, and he goes, "Ted, that's called sales enablement." I said, "Really? Sales enablement?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. No one knows what that means," kind of thing. I was like, "Oh man, this is great." He's like, "You should join the Sales Enablement Society. What this has given for me is kind of a safe environment where there's lots of people interested in trying to figure out, how do we take these military best practices and apply them in sales enablement, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out to do. So now I found a bunch of people that are willing to have those conversations with me. So it's been a very great experience, and I can't wait to meet all of you guys next week face to face finally.
So tell me more about how you see those principles and practices from the Marine Corps helping sales enablement managers. Maybe you give me a story.
I see it, some of the things we discussed so far are directly applicable from a mindset perspective. The philosophy of maneuver warfare and looking for an incremental advantage over the enemy can apply it in terms of sales and competitive advantage. How can we create a competitive advantage at the decisive time and place along the buyer's journey, right? We can do that in terms of superior training, better sales talent, more compelling competitive offerings, right? From a terms of focused and mindset, same thing, deliberate targeting. What's the mission we're trying to accomplish? We're not just trying to sell stuff. Let's narrow that goal down and make it more tangible. We're trying to sell this offering to this buyer at this target company because it's a good match for the problem that they're having.
One of the big principles is Semper Fi. Can you explain that? And how could sales enablement managers learn from that?
Did you say Semper Fi?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Marine slogan, Semper Fidelis, right? Always faithful. You're always faithful to your unit core God country. And you need to kind of try to build that same sense of culture and that same sense of spirit within your sales team to include your supporting effort, your sales enablement folks, right? Where we call it, one team, one fight. We're all in this together. We're trying to accomplish the mission. So if a sales guy is unsuccessful and doesn't hit his number, then we are not hitting our revenue goals as a company. And we're failing as sales enablement people if we're not setting them up for success. So if you can create those strong bonds and that focus and that commitment to be always faithful to your mission, then you will be a high performing team.
How do you translate the why into business?
First step I do when I get assigned to a task or I get presented with a problem that I'm supposed to solve is the first thing I do is the mission analysis and the problem framing. What is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the desired outcome? What does success look like? And once you've kind of done that, that's the why. That's exactly what you're doing, right? So and then you start breaking that down, everyone has a contributing piece to the bigger why. So the big why for a company is hitting your revenue targets, right? You promised the investors on the street that you were going to hit a certain number. Now you got two ways to hit that number. You're either going to sales or cost savings, and none of us as employees want to go through cost savings. We want to achieve that through revenue growth. So now everyone has a specific why behind what they're doing, right? So as a sales enablement guy, I'm not necessarily focused on the end goal, the bigger picture, the higher mission is to hit a revenue target. But my goal is to make sure that their sales guy is successful one pursuit at a time. Did I give that sales guy all the timely, accurate, and relevant actionable information, intelligence that he needs to be successful on that pursuit with that buyer at that time on that day? That's my why.
Well, that was very enlightening, Ted. I want to thank you for the service for our country to make us safe, but also I want to thank you for contributing to the Sales Enablement Society to make us more successful. I appreciate your time.
No, I thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be part of this great organization, and I look forward to meeting you finally in person next week in Dallas.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.